No. You
No.
ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. 3,
Two,
2, 1.
Not
quite.
You're
You're live.
Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly broadcast of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here, and here is
Becky.
It's all live today.
Yes, we had some technical difficulties early on in the week, so we're doing this live, and wish us luck.
Exactly, because it's better to do it in one take than several.
than 25 takes.
Absolutely.
That's
No
like-
editing this time. No bleeps and bloops.
It's completely fresh.
Exactly. But what a week it was from a breakaway Super League announcement, and it's all finished, to a NASA mission to the moon with SpaceX.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's skip all that and just go to the Nikon news. So.
Right. Well, first up, Nikon announced 10% off selected Nikon F-mount lenses, which includes the likes of the 16 to 35 f4,
Nice.
the 70 to 300. There's a couple of DX lenses in the mix, and the most popular for us has actually been the 200 to 500 f5.6.
Oh yes, and I heard there's a 2470 VR has a really good deal on it.
Yes. Now, we actually don't have a lot of these items in stock because they were very quickly scooped up right at the beginning of the offer a couple of days ago. But even if you purchase any of these items within the deadline, which is the 28th of April, so get your orders in before then, you will still obviously qualify for the discount, and then we will ship any products as soon as they come in so that you don't miss out.
So when does it expire?
28th.
28th.
That's
okay.
next Wednesday.
All right, and it's just made me think as well, because D3500 and D5600 bodies are going up in price as well.
Yes, from the 1st of May.
Yes, so I guess, again, they're out of stock, but if people want to place their orders now, it's probably better to book it at an older price, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't know when we're getting more of those in stock, so that's going to be an interesting one. Maybe don't all rush to buy that one.
Exactly. Maybe they'll upgrade to Z30, who knows?
Maybe. Okay.
All right, so the next news, that's a big one. Nikon announced the firmware releases for pretty much all their Z cameras. I will speak like this.
I see what you did there.
Exactly. So they're coming out on April 26th, so get your broadband ready to download them.
Yeah.
So what we're going to see is version 1.2 for Z7 Mark II and Z6 Mark II firmware, version 3.3 for Z7 and Z6 Mark I, and then we're going to get 1.1 version for Z5 and 2.1 for Z50. All will be released on April the 26th.
Yeah. Now, in terms of what the firmware actually gives you, a lot of it is quite similar across the cameras, but version 1.2 for the Z7 II and 6 II will offer increased AF performance, including faster focus when shooting with AF in low light situations. Very, very handy.
Nice. I like all the sweet AF performance upgrades.
Yeah, exactly. Further, AF usability when using an external speed light will also increase through improvements to detection performance in scenes where it was difficult to detect faces and eyes, as well as improvements to subject visibility during live view shooting. All very welcomed additions. In addition to that, they've added tracking frames used for face and eye detection, as well as subject tracking AF, have been improved, enabling smoother and more stable shooting.
Interesting. So let's start with the flash gun. So I guess this is aimed for events and wedding photographers?
Yes, exactly. Where you're shooting in low light, you need the speed light. You can't use the built-in infrared focus assist light. That's what I was
And
looking
then focusing low light, generally for mirrorless cameras, was a lot, well, not as good as DSLRs.
Yeah,
So that should improve on that.
Exactly. Now, additional updates for the Z6 and Z7 Z50 include save focus position option. Now, that allows the current focus position, so wherever you've got focused, to be saved when the camera is turned off and restored when next turned on. The new firmware for the Z6 will also add the voice memo recording play function, popular with the D6.
Nice.
The addition of the voice memo recording play function is also planned for the Z6 II in a future firmware update.
So not now, but hopefully in a month or so.
Yeah.
All right. The question I had for you is, how often do you talk to your camera, Becky?
I probably more often than I realize. I don't usually go out sort of David Attenborough style and talk about what I'm shooting,
No?
but I was wondering in what situation you would leave a voice memo. I know it's been in all the flagship bodies.
Okay, well, generally for event photographers, so sports photographers, so let's say it's, yeah, some news photographers where they need to send the file straight away and maybe make a comment to a person who edits the image and puts online
Yeah.
to say, let's say, do this and this, that was recorded, that and that. So to have this option is quite useful, I would say.
Okay, interesting. News just in. Oh, we need to be a little bit louder.
All right, let's do that. Hello, hello,
Actually, the easiest thing for me to do it is to do it in computer.
Okay, we should be louder now, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit louder. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so yeah, you may want to leave a note for your editor to say, well, get me pizza in 5 minutes.
Sorry.
I'll be right in.
In this case, we've got, let's just increase the...
Exactly. And in terms of this, I also say some people talk to cats, some people talk to the cameras.
This is true.
You know,
Some
and
people talk to plants.
exactly. And then, you know, we have this feature on their flagships, so D3, D4, D5, and D6 cameras.
That's right.
It's nice to have them in Z series cameras. And it feels to me that obviously they mentioned Z6, but I'm sure it will come in Z7 cameras at some point in the future because it seems like it's just a software update, really.
Yeah, exactly. Now, they've also added the low light AF mode in the Z5 and included the faster AF detection speed during low light situations. And the Z5 will also gain the save focus point position option. So a lot of those features that they're putting into the 6.2 and 7.2, they've also moved down to the Z5.
That's true because Z5 didn't have AF upgrades.
That's right.
Firmware. So, but one of the things about the focus point, it would be nice for them to introduce some sort of function button that can just log the focus. Because if you are that kind of single point guy who keeps it in the middle, or girl, you know, it's nice to have this. I'm not quite sure why they don't have the log button on their Z cameras, personally.
No, I think that they're almost there with the save focus position addition. But yes, a lock would be really, really handy.
Because the save focus position in this case as well when you turn off and turn it on again. But I wonder if there's some sort of thing where you can hold the button pressed and it just locks it there till you press it again.
You know what you have? You have, it's not quite the same, but you can assign your autofocus lock to one of the function buttons and it's press and then you leave it and then press. I don't know if that also then stops you from changing the point.
Yeah, my problem is my nose is big and it just presses on the screen and it just moves the focus in point. So what I normally do is I turn off the touchscreen autofocus.
Yeah.
So that helps. And then it's just some accidental, you know, kind of, you know, when I move my thumb and it just kind of changes it. Exactly.
I'm with you. Okay.
Okay, so we've covered all this. Then D6 also had a firmware upgrade. So that was earlier last week. And it had quite a few very niche updates.
They've done a lot. What's the first one?
Okay, well, this one is, it's plenty. It's a recall shooting functions hold item has been added to custom settings F3 custom controls. Assigning this role to control lets you recall previously saved values for settings such as exposure and metering by pressing the control once during viewfinder photography. The previous values can be restored by pressing the control a second time. Recall shooting functions hold can be assigned to the preview button, F1, F2, FN, basically all FN buttons as well as AF1 subset selector, etc., etc.
That's a meaty function to add there. So I don't know if I fully got my head.
Yeah, can you just translate this to me because I couldn't understand.
So recall shooting functions. So essentially you've set up a whole bunch of shooting functions. And then you've pressed a button to save them, and then you've changed your settings, and then you press a button again to go back to those settings that you had before. Am I getting that right, do you think?
Well, if it is what you say it is, it's a pretty good function to have, isn't it?
It seems to be, and it says specifically for viewfinder photography, not for live view, but that seems to be about what it is. It is an interesting one because obviously with the Zs and with a lot of the sort of mid-range DSLRs, we have U1, U2, U3, which performs that function. We don't have that on the Pro bodies.
That's true.
So I wonder if that's what they're kind of going for with this.
Oh, I see. So you can basically shoot a portraiture and then move on to landscape, and with the press of a button, you go back to portraiture.
I'd like to think so. I don't know if that's exactly what it is. We'd have to see it in the flesh to know for sure.
That's true. I was always puzzled with Nikon shooting banks because they had the shooting banks for shooting menu as well as custom settings menu. Sometimes it was really difficult to figure out which shooting bank you're in and which shooting bank is it for custom settings or shooting menu, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So I guess this should hopefully simplify things.
Potentially. Now, another option that they've added is prefer subselector center has been added to the custom setting menu at position F13. Although at default settings, the subselector cannot be used to position the focus point while the center is pressed, selecting off for prefer subselector center lets you hold the center and still position the focus point by pressing the subselector up, down, left, or right. So you can, for example, assign AF area mode to the center of the subselector, then use the subselector to position the focus point while the center still serves in the AF area mode role. What does that mean?
My forehead is sweating just to get this. But the question I had, why all Nikon marketing announcements, the press releases are written by writers and then
Not photographers.
not photographers, and then all the firmware updates are written by robots?
Yeah, it's very confusing. Okay, so they've also added another focus point selection speed item to custom setting A17 focus point options. The speed at which the focus points for viewfinder photography can be cycled by holding the subselector, blah, 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 can be normal, high, or extra high. So you can basically scroll through them faster.
Well, personally, I support everything that has speed in it. So, I just, if it's faster, that's really good.
Excellent. We also have ratings now displayed at all times during playback zoom, even where the image only, so none, is selected for playback option. So you can rate your pictures even if you've just got the image up and no other information.
Well, that's pretty good. So if you travel and you don't want to, say, use your iPad or something like this, so it's quite nice because you can quickly rate your images on the go.
Exactly. Last but not least, the camera can now more reliably focus in poorly lit or low contrast subjects, and low contrast subjects when dynamic area AF is selected for AF area mode.
Nice. A lot of those niche improvements. And the interesting thing is a lot of people say, well, what are they doing with the D6? Well, what they do is they constantly update the camera. And I think a lot of those features Nikon really kind of doesn't talk about in their D6 cameras, especially like this AF area modes that they have for continuous tracking and things like this. So I think in terms of this, Nikon didn't really market D6 as well as they should have, because this camera, what it has, no other cameras have.
Yeah, which is very interesting that they have not publicized it enough, I would say. Right.
Okay, well, there were a couple more news since we record our first version of this podcast, which is in the bin now.
It is.
But today, Nikon products receive Red Dot Award, Product Design 2021. So,
yay!
This is quite prestigious Japanese award. Everyone loves to have their cameras awarded. So
Red Dot Design.
Exactly, Red Dot Design. It's quite famous. If you don't know, go check it out.
For sure.
So D6 got a Red Dot Award for full-frame digital SLR cameras.
Fantastic.
Z7 II and Z6 II won for their full-frame mirrorless cameras, and also MBN11. The grip that has buttons on it, also got a Red Dot Award. You see,
excellent
if you
design.
add buttons to the grip, you get an award straight away.
That's right. So, that's what you need to do.
Exactly. And then Nikon Z 2.8, the trinity of lenses, so 1424, 2470, and 1700 also got their awards respectively, as well as binoculars.
Ooh, the 10 by 25 stabilized binoculars. Not seen those before, so that's interesting.
And then Eclipse I.
EI.
I said I.
I.
Yeah, educational microscope. It educates you.
I think that's right. It's amazing.
It's nice. I haven't seen this one as well.
No.
Lots of awards for Nikon.
So some very good awards there for Nikon. Well done, Nikon, for that. And also fabulous to see that the 6 II and the 7 II both won the top mirrorless awards for design.
In green, not just Greys get awards, but also Nikon themselves.
Nikon as well.
All right. And another news that came in that we cannot quite understand, so do what you will with that information. Nikon introduced remote control SDK software enabling multiple NEXIV integration in the production line. So what is SDK, first of all? This is a developer software normally.
Okay.
So you got PlayStation SDK. So if you, let's say, create games for PlayStation, you need to get that kind of kit to do that. So, or for Switch in your case. So, so this is basically for Nikon things. And what is, it's, okay, NEXIV, it's a video measuring system. Remember we talked about that it measures the, the size of the semiconductors and things like this?
Oh, yes. Okay.
So that's what it does. So for this system now, whoever buys it can develop tools to use it for their own production.
Okay.
So effectively, all they do is they say we open in our software protocol to the companies who buy equipment from us.
Oh, how generous of them.
Fantastic. So if you want to read more on that, go to Nikon website and have a look at their press releases.
Marvelous. Now, next up, ReallyRightStuff is coming out with an updated series of L plates for the Z6, Z7, 6 7 II, which is designed to fit the external battery pack. So I assume that this will fit both the MBN10 and the MBN11 battery packs. I personally don't use L brackets, but it's quite an interesting. I know a lot of people that do.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what ReallyRightStuff does. I do find them quite expensive, to be honest with you. So, if you look at those, then you have what they call three-legged thingy.
Three-legged thing.
So they do L plates for Z cameras. They're a lot cheaper. And then Small Rig, which Chinese manufacturer, yeah, they came a long way in terms of their quality as well. So for cheap options, definitely have a look at those. But ReallyRightStuff is considered to be one of the best on the market. Now, the next news is congratulations to Canon for announcing development of their Z9 competitor, which is called R3, as well their two long telephoto lenses. I think it's 400 and 600 mil lenses, as well their macro lens, which is I think 100 mil. The news about this, so it's not just development announcement for the camera, but also all three lenses will be available in July.
That is a very, I would say, aggressive move from Canon in a good way, because in our viewpoint, at least that means that it encourages Nikon to perhaps release other things sooner.
Well, definitely, it's your turn, Nikon.
Yeah, exactly. But also the fact that the lenses are going to be available in July, and available not just for the Olympics photographers, but for the masses, means that hopefully you all right there with your.
I'm doing a soundtrack.
Thank you. Yeah. Hopefully the podcast listeners are going to love that.
Exactly.
Hopefully that means that we will see more availability of those long tele lenses from Nikon very soon, as opposed to waiting post-Olympics, which I don't want to wait. I'm too impatient for that. I'd rather they come out sooner.
Absolutely. Several notes on this. I'm glad that we are delivering the quality to our viewers and listeners. Second of all, so all lenses that announced, those are actually needed as well for Z series. So those are kind of lenses that need to be released. So I personally think that we'll have a couple of busy months coming up with Nikon delivering on those. Tom Hogan in one of his articles mentioned that actually the reason why we see a lot of pro lenses being released is because of Tokyo Olympics in Japan. Now, Tokyo Olympics in Japan will probably have very limited amount of spectators, and they all pretty much will be Japanese. So there's not going to be many tourists visiting the country at the time. So from that point of view, Japanese companies like Fuji, Sony, Canon, and Nikon, they're not releasing really a lot of consumer products at the moment because there's no point of advertising for people who are not going to be there.
I see what you mean.
A lot of this stuff has actually been released for professional photographers who will cover the events. So that's why we saw Z9 announcement and R3. And that's why the long lens has been released. So those things I think we will see Nikon announce. And my thought was that Nikon will have prototypes for Olympics. But since these two lenses will be available in July,
you think we're going to see the real deal?
I think so. I think we should really start to see we will see announcements shortly with the release within a month. It should be this way. I mean, at least in very small quantities.
Exactly. I mean, I know that for a lot of long lenses, particularly things like the 120 to 300, the 500 PF, even the primes, the 400 to 500s. We didn't get a massive release of those. They're very expensive.
Yeah.
They don't produce them in huge quantities.
No, generally there's a waiting list when they first released.
Yeah, even the 500 PF, as a lot of you who've bought that lens will know, there was about a year wait before we actually started to see them on the shelf.
You probably could get your Rolex faster than 500 PF at the time.
Yeah, a custom Rolex as well. Anyway, so that's very exciting news for us because we do hope that with Canon's announcement, that means that Nikon might just take a leaf out of their book and announce a few lenses and make them more readily available. Hopefully, we'll kick them into gear.
Absolutely, and then we definitely need that macro lens, isn't it? It's
For sure.
sun is out, it's beautiful weather outside, at least in London, so we definitely need a macro lens to occupy us.
That's right. Now is the time for the macro lens.
Exactly. So what's next?
So next up, we had a little look through an article by the beloved Tom Hogan. We love Tom.
Tom Hogan Watch 2021.
So his article is called "So What Would a Z8 Be Like?" Now this is very, very accurate and interesting article, just based on the different routes that Nikon could go down. He says, if the Z9 is 45 megapixels, as I suspect it is, then a Z8 would have to be at least 80 megapixels to be clearly differentiated at the sensor. This I understand. Why do I think the Z9 is 45 megapixels? Some rumors out of Japan mostly. Hard to tell if those rumors are correct, but staying at 45 megapixels makes sense to me for a number of reasons.
He knows.
He knows things. So now, before we talk about his speculated lineup, which I think is worth going through, the question is, how will Nikon release the Z8? Will it be sort of like a D3, D300?
So different routes they can go, really, isn't it? So
yeah, because they've done a few different things in the past, haven't they? They've got the flagship body, and then they've either done a mini version of the flagship body, or, I mean, with the D5, D500, they went DX route.
Okay, well, let's start so with the first one. Which one did you say? D3?
So D3, we had the D3, D300 at the same time, but we also had the D3, D700. The 700 came 6 months
We
later.
also had D3 and D3X. So let's go one by one. So D3, D300. That means that you effectively looking at something like Z90, so which will have all the specifications of Z9 with a smaller sensor.
Yes.
So a Pro, APS-C or DX body. So that's option one. That leaves us to Z8 being a higher resolution body. So effectively, two cameras will be released, Z90 and then Z8.
Sure.
So then we had D3, D700,
Yes.
which effectively had exactly the same sensor, but in different form factors.
Yeah. Now that kind of almost kills off the Z9 sales.
Exactly. And that's what Nikon learned when they released D3 and D700, because they didn't really sell as many D3s after D700 came out, which is about 6 months later.
That's right. And then we've got the D3, D3X route, which is a sort of sports body, and then a Pro high resolution studio, landscape, etc.
But the same build and form factor.
Yes, exactly. Now, I don't think, personally speaking, now that we've seen the 850, the 810, all of those smaller form factor, high resolution bodies, I don't really see a point in having a huge flagship sized high resolution camera. I don't feel it's necessary at this point. I think that if they are going to do that, Tom seems to think that. I think we are thinking that as well.
What are you leaning more towards to yourself? What would you like to see?
I mean, I would love for a Z8 to come out and be a super high resolution camera.
Okay.
There are plenty of competitors for that.
So you're looking at what, 80 megapixels?
Yeah, at least 60 to 80 megapixels. And then separately, yes, having a DX body with the Pro kind of spec in terms of speed of focus and everything would be lovely. Will it happen? I don't think so. But that's a talk for another day.
But it's interesting because remember when we asked, would you pay, let's say, £2,000 for Pro DX body? I mean, it was kind of, in our comments, it was kind of split because some people say yes, some people say, well, no, I would go full frame. So, but yeah, it could be an option there.
Yeah.
I agree with you in most cases. The only thing I think that Z8, while it shouldn't be the size of Z9, it also should be bigger than Z7.
Okay.
Because professional photographers, they prefer a larger body. You don't really need to have a built-in grip there, but just to have a camera that is maybe size of the 850 or maybe just slightly less, maybe 10% smaller.
It'd be a bit skinnier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a little bit skinnier, but just enough grip so that your pinky doesn't kind of hang off the body. Exactly.
It's like when you drink tea,
exactly.
when you hold a camera.
So I definitely see the 80 megapixel studio camera with a Z9 quality build, but smaller than Z9 body, bigger than Z7 size.
Okay.
So just for professional photographers, and then additional grip with buttons on it, so that could be useful.
Sure.
But the reason why I think as well that let's say it should have something around 80 megapixels is because at this point you have cropped medium format competition creeping in, and we're not talking Hasselblad; they're still expensive, and obviously Phase 1 is a completely different story. But with the release of Fuji GFX 100S, which is £5,500 in UK, it makes it within the reach.
Yes.
From full frame users to switch to medium format. Obviously, once we add the lenses, which are quite expensive, I think they're at least starting at about £2,000 for plus. But it's not as unreachable as it used to be before.
Yes, for sure.
So and that body is 100 megapixels as well. So for full frame manufacturers to compete, and I'm not just talking Nikon, but also Canon and other manufacturers as well, but they need to have the resolution to match that. So 60 megapixels is not going to be good enough at this point.
Okay, fair enough. I see your logic there. Right, now in terms of Tom's vision of a lineup, let's say, a couple of interesting points that I thought just worth noting. He said he thinks there should be a Z30. He said no or optional EVF at the basic entry price. I do not think that Nikon should get rid of the EVF personally, but if it were going to reduce the cost...
If it's no EVF at $399,
yeah, which is the same price as the D3500.
Yeah, because once you have the EVF, it's probably extra £100.
Yes, exactly.
I wonder if optional EVF, they could sell it separately. For maybe charge, well, 99 is probably going to be too cheap, but charge additional 150 and whoever needs it, they'll add it.
I really hate optional EVFs.
Anything optional.
I despise them.
I do.
Then he also mentioned a Z50 Mark II to add some missing pieces and upgrade this excellent camera. I agree, it is an excellent buy. Tom went for the Z90 option, so 33 plus megapixels. This was what I was thinking. The resolution can't be as high on a DX body because 45 megapixels on a DX body, low light performance is going to be horrendous, right?
But wouldn't it make sense if Z9 is 45 megapixels? So then Z9 should be about 24 if you use the same sensor effectively.
Yes,
so,
technically.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, and he says with as much of the Z9 tech as possible, might not be 8K, but 6K is okay.
I'm just thinking, coming back to Z50 Mark II, I think it would be nice for them to add VR on the sensor.
Yeah, for sure.
So IBIS. That could be nice.
There's a few other bits and pieces, but I can't think of them off the top of my
Power
head.
delivery and all that.
Power delivery, very important. It was the battery that has been the biggest kind of irk for me with the Z50. Apart from that, I think it's a lovely camera.
It's not big enough, do you think, compared to, let's say, ENL15 battery for Z5?
And compared to how power hungry the camera is. Yeah, particularly if you do shoot video, which is one of its primary kind of benefits, is that it's a tiny 4K camera. And also if you plan to use it for example, streaming or what we're doing right here, you definitely need power delivery for that.
Live from London.
That's right. Then he talks about the Z5 II, minor upgrades, Z6 III and Z7 III, to kind of, Z6 III, he says, move the Z6 a bit further away from the Z5. So kind of split the range up a little bit there, which we've talked about in previous weeks.
We're not talking about intermittent releases of those cameras, of course. He just talks about the future lineup, effectively.
This is like the wish list of Z lineup. Z7 III to fill in the missing pieces and of the very popular camera already. The Z8 being the pro megapixel monster that starts to compete with medium format. And then the Z9 is the pro speed monster that competes with the Sony A1. It needed to have a different noise.
I can't pronounce R's. I can do the pirate.
So that is, that's what Tom thinks. We pretty much agree with a lot of those. I think that's a good look to the future, let's say.
Exactly.
Tom for president.
I agree, absolutely. But as we talked about the Z6 and Z7 being so close to each other, and potential update, I don't think it makes sense to release Z6 Mark III with the same 24 megapixel sensor.
No.
I think resolution has to go up, and if resolution goes up, then effectively you're in Z7 territory at this stage. So it comes down to Z8 price. It just tells me that if Z7 and Z6 Mark III exist in the future, then Z8 will be quite expensive. So we were talking about 4K at the time. I think it's probably now in 4.5 or 5K territory, according to this list, let's say.
I think so too.
Okay, so in terms of when Z8 will appear, Tom thinks that it will come out by the end of the next year, which is 2022. I personally hope that it will come out either spring, summer, or very early autumn, so August, September. And the reason for that being is Nikon really needs to be aggressive with those things. And in terms of this, okay, we're looking at Z9 being released in autumn this year. Why not to make an announcement early in January, February, with a release in a couple of months? Because again, I personally wait for Z8. I don't wait for Z9. And while it's nice to have, I'm waiting for Z8. At the moment, as I said many times, and a lot of people don't agree with me, but if I have to shoot commercially, I will use my D850. I won't use that camera. Well, I love that cameras. They're fantastic. In my opinion, if it's, if I get paid, I use D850. So as simple as that. I'm not arguing with anyone about this, but this is my personal choice.
Don't want to start a
And
fight
it's
here.
okay. We're all inclusive here. So in terms of this, Z8 is important for me as a photographer.
Yes.
So because when the 880 eventually comes out, and if it comes out, and it's ultimate f6, the ultimate digital camera, at this point I'm thinking, well, maybe I better save up and switch to Z series, because obviously this is the future. That's what they want to switch to. So
True.
I need that camera tomorrow.
The future is Z.
Exactly.
Right. Next up, Nekan FY3 Vintage Retro DSLR digital camera model logo. Why did you just put like the direct translation?
It's literally direct translation from Chinese.
So essentially what it is, let me just show you. It is a Lego bricks, but not Lego licensed, Lego bricks construction toy.
Exactly. So I think the title matches the looks of the camera, if you see what I mean. So...
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it is very much not a real camera. As you can see, it's got a fake little LCD
not
screen.
Not a real camera, not a financial advice.
No, that's right. Don't go out and buy this and expect it to be sort of 20 megapixels. Anyway, so that is now available to buy from their website. I think it's $9.99.
Yeah, it's shipped from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong dollars.
Exactly.
It's 10 Hong Kong dollars. So
no,
I don't.
It's 19 Hong Kong dollars.
Oh, sorry, 19. I beg your pardon.
And it's probably something like £1 million.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not a foreign exchange.
We're gonna have disclaimers for every segment on the.
Well, it might be a good camera to take to the moon. I was really keen on reading the announcement that NASA gave a contract to SpaceX. To design a moon lander.
That's very exciting.
Can you imagine that? So we are actually not just going to the moon financially, also physically. Not me and you, but some people.
Some people that can afford it.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So at least it will be real this time.
Yay.
Okay, let's move to review section.
Yes.
Only one review this week. So DXO Mark did review Nikon Z7 camera, and DXO Mark, it's not only a software company who produces raw developer software and some other plugins, but they also do test and measure the sensors. So noise levels, altitude and latitude, dynamic range. So they do all this, and what they say, it's the Nikon's best mirrorless camera to date.
Yeah, they gave it a mark of 100. Now, they did say the Z7 II achieved an overall DXO Mark sensor score of 100, which is a slight improvement over the model it replaces, the Z7, and puts it in joint first place in our sensor ranking for full frame sensors, alongside the likes of the D850, the Panasonic Lumix DC-S1R, and older Sony A7R3 mirrorless models. This also positions the Z7 II just behind the two cropped medium format models at the top of our database. So they've got two medium format, but not full medium format.
Yeah, they have X1 D50C Hasselblad and Pentax 645Z above it.
They're just like 1 or 2 marks above. So though the difference of 1 or 2 points in terms of overall sensitivity is obviously very small, the Z7 II sensor has excellent, practically class-leading maximum color depth and dynamic range, measured at 26.3 bits and 14.7 EV respectively. Not quite so strong, but still very good, is its low-light ISO sports measurement of ISO 2841. So this is obviously not an official ISO ranking, because you don't get 2841 ISO, but we believe that this is where they push it.
Where it gets the best possible quality, and after this, the quality starts to drop off. So you get more noise, and you do lose dynamic range at this point. So 2841 is pretty much kind of the highest ISO they would use for acceptable image quality, according to them. Obviously, everyone is different, so it's not exactly an advice to photographer, not a photographic advice.
That's right. Now, just to give you a little, that's the view of their chart that they provide. So we've got the portrait color depth, the landscape dynamic range, and the sports/low light ISO, which are all beautiful things. I'm very glad that they've done that. Now, if you want to have a look at the full lineup from DxO Mark, we will pop a link in the description box once we've finished streaming, or in the podcast notes when this goes up onto our podcast platforms.
Absolutely. There are lots of graphs and charts in there.
Yes, so if that gets you excited,
Is that your thing?
Then go for it.
You see, I didn't do any financial news.
I'm so glad.
You see, I decided to give it a break.
I don't think I could have done it live.
You see, what I want to do is I want to give you a break before the Q4 Nikon announcement, which we're probably going to spend about an hour just dissecting.
You will be doing that one alone.
No, we're going to do it live.
Oh, okay.
With no bloopers or anything.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Exactly.
Live with no bloopers. Yes.